How's it going? I'm Matt DeBarra, the Undercover Contractor. Today I'm really, really excited to have Glen Hampton with me. Glen, I've seen your work, I've seen what you've done, and I think it's amazing. Glen, for those of you listening, is a phenomenal landscape designer. He's been in the industry over 40 years. He's got a plethora of experience. And the reason I wanted to bring Glen on today was because I wanted to give a perspective on something that gets really, really tricky to know whether or not you're making the right decision around. And that's the design world, the conceptual world, because it's really, really subjective. So Glen, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Matt.
So tell me a little, what's that?
Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Tell me a little bit about your experience. I mean, I know it started at a young age and you've got a really unique story. Where did all this begin? What's your construction design beginnings?
Well, I've been drawing since I was 2. Always wanted to be an architect.
Wow.
Had some bad counseling in junior college that steered me into landscape architecture, which I'm glad it did, because it's much more interesting. And so I went to Cal Poly in Pomona, graduated with a degree in landscape architecture, and bummed around to a few firms for a while. And then when I was 26, I started my own firm.
Wow. What was that like? I mean, you know, we're going back now. Like, what was that like to start your own firm and to kind of jump in on your own? What gave you the confidence to say, I have this?
I'm the kind of person who can't work for someone else.
Yeah.
I don't like to be told what to do. And so I think I knew early on that I was going to be my own boss, so to speak.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's helped in terms of dealing with the clients, right? Because you had a confidence knowing that you could make a decision on the design and there was nobody that was going to say, hey, this is wrong, or this, you know, you didn't sell this for enough or whatever, right? You had that sort of freedom to be able to do that.
Yeah, I made all the mistakes.
Well, that's why we're here. So before we dive into more specifics, I got a little bit of a curveball, a little bit of a surprise for you. So in front of you, you'll see I have a red Solo cup, 2 pieces of tape, 4 number 2 pencils, and 8 small straws. We also have the scissors. The tape measure.
This was for beer pong.
Yeah, no, that's later. That's after we shut off the cameras.
Oh, okay.
And so what I want to have you do is you're gonna have 2 minutes. We'll put that up on the board actually. And what you're gonna want to do is we're gonna count down, and you're gonna have 2 minutes to create the tallest structure that you can. We're going for height. If you want to make it look great, that's awesome. But the end goal is height. How do you feel? Do you have any questions?
The tallest structure?
Yeah, we're going
like
for
a
height.
Building?
I'm going from the bottom of the table up. I want to measure that height, and however tall you can get it is the measurement we're going to record.
Okay, maybe let me get this straight. So I'm supposed to build this
right now.
Of this?
Yeah, these are your tools. These are your tools. You've got an amazing resume, but we got to show the listeners. We got to validate this amazing experience. So here we are. So we'll kick this off. And any more questions, Glen?
No. How long do I have to do this?
You have 2 minutes. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
Good strategy. Good strategy. Okay, so we're putting the pencils together there. I like that.
I hope I can have tape.
Yeah, okay. Thinking ahead, planning ahead. Sorry, Glen, you got a minute 45 left.
Okay. I got plenty of time.
Oh yeah, you got plenty of time. I see what you're doing. Interesting. Okay.
I just hope it's going to stand up.
I think I see where you're going with this, but I'm not positive. Interesting.
So what are the straws for?
The straws are for whatever you want them to be.
Okay.
Let's see here. There we go. Nice. So, okay, hole in the cup. We're going pencil inside the top. You got your tower. Is it going to stand up? And a minute left.
Hurry up.
You wanna is this your final?
That's my
this
final.
Is your final submission?
Yeah.
Okay, let's get the height. Let's see. What do we think? What do you guess it is?
30 inches.
30 inches. Okay, we're gonna see here. Let's see.
24 to 30. 24, right?
Ooh, right in the middle. 26 inches.
26.
All right.
Okay.
The leader with a minute. We had 35 seconds, but you were done in a minute. So
what was the objective here?
The objective here was to see your creativity and your design, and I like both. So this is awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Competing against someone else who got taller.
Well, you are. There's other people who have done this, and right now you're the leader. So we had 22 inches was the high record. You're at 26. So This is good. I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Mind has to work a certain way.
Apparently, I mean, because you were so confident. I need to know more about this. Did you have a design in your head I mean, that was amazing.
No, I just went, so how can I get the most height?
Yeah.
Blew the pencil. I probably could have got a couple more inches if I put the tape up a little higher.
Yeah.
But I thought, you're not going to get it by just stacking the pencils. So
Yeah.
why not just tape them together and stick it in there, and there you go.
Wow. Well, I'm impressed. So I think you validated your experience as far as I'm concerned. So talk me through a little bit about, what made you, so we talked a little bit about your origin and your background here, but a lot of people, and I've mentioned this before on other episodes, but a lot of people want to, they get into construction and they get out. What made you stick in this so long? I mean, what held you into this industry?
I was kind of, the thing is, when I was in college, I had so many different interests. I majored in drama. I majored in urban planning. I sort of got it all out of my system. So when I decided to go into landscape architecture, I was focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit, over the years, I've kind of thought of doing some different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I always came back to this and always stayed with it. But also, I'm the kind of person that I don't look back. I keep looking forward. I'm getting old enough now, I'm starting to look back a little bit. But initially, my whole thing is just keep moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. So if I hit an obstacle, I just figure out how to get around it. Move forward. And, sometimes it sends me in different directions. And I've always been fairly lucky, too. It's like our relationship. Somebody referred you to me.
Yeah.
And you give me a lot of work, and we still don't know who referred you, do we?
I don't think we do. Yeah. No.
But you just came out of the blue. And I did the Pasadena Showcase in 1982. I didn't have any work. And my first two clients were Merlin Olsen from the Rams and Alice and Joe Colombo in Trader Joe's Markets.
Wow.
So it just sort of fell in.
Yeah.
And then I ended up doing a lot of celebrities the same way.
Yeah.
It's sort of like somebody would tell somebody. And my business has basically been word of mouth.
Yeah.
My whole career.
And that's one thing I want to highlight, right? Is and this is something I've always admired about you, Glenn, is that Glenn is a guy who is not the flashy landing page website guy. You're kind of a hard guy to find if you don't get that word of mouth experience. And so I want to highlight that for the listeners, that there are some great contractors. I mean, you've been in the business, your resume is phenomenal. And I think what I really love and admire about what you do is you create a vision that's buildable. So you understand it from the beginning design concept, you understand it from a budget client satisfaction perspective, but then you hand over drawings that are buildable. In my experience, there's sometimes a gap between something that looks really great as a design and then the contractor gets it and can't build off of that and can't give an accurate price. And so I think that that's a really important distinction, is you're talking about word of mouth and how important that's been for you. What are some of the do's and don'ts? Let's say I'm a homeowner, right? Or I'm listening and I'm going to hire a landscape designer. How do I make that decision, right? Because at some point you're testing ethics, because you make a phone call, they come out, they've invested the time to show up. They, at the end of the day, want to earn business, right? So how do we know as a homeowner what questions to ask her?
Let me take it a little further than that. So what I would suggest is that 9 times out of 10, get a contractor that's a referral if you can. Generally, you can read reviews online and all that, but who knows where those came from? Are they really accurate?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. So what I've always said is, if you know somebody like a neighbor, or you see somebody's work down the street, or a relative or whatever, that's the best way. And then also too, I got a lot of my business from architects and interior designers. So if you're working on a full project where you have an architect, interior designer, whatever, you have an advantage right there, because usually they have someone who's a landscape designer that they've worked with. So that's always a good way to go. It's more of a team thing. But if not, then I would say, do your homework, check the people out, ask for references, look at their portfolio. And then also too, when you interview them, just be relaxed. You're looking for somebody who's relaxed. You want to make it more of a conversation. because your number one priority is, can I work with this person?
Mm-hmm.
Can this person give me what I'm looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And you have the advantage that most designers are doing the same thing with you, because clients have a tendency to think, oh, I'm going to hire this guy and he wants my job and whatever. That's not necessarily true, because when I go in an interview with a client, right away I get, can I work with this person? Or is this person going to be difficult? Is this a job that I really want? And so the client needs to know that that's what they're thinking, because most clients, I think, don't have that perspective. And then the other thing I'd like to say is the biggest thing the client needs to do is get a feel for what landscape costs. Because most clients, even today, after all these years of experience, they think that everybody's done a house probably, or they've done an interior, but most people have no clue what landscape costs.
I can relate.
And so, yes, I guess you can. And so what you need to do is find out, do your homework. Don't have somebody come out to your house, or 4 or 5 guys, and, then to pick a guy and say, oh, well, I want this, I want this, I want this, because a lot of designers won't tell you what things are going to cost. And then you're thinking 20,000, they're thinking 200,000. So, and also know what your budget is, and there's a misconception with most clients, that if I tell them my budget, that they're going to screw me over or whatever, which is not true. So what you need to do is you need to be realistic about your budget, because no matter how beautiful the design is, no matter how great the designer is, no matter how great the contractor is, if you don't have the money to do it, or it's not money you want to spend, because I've worked for some really wealthy people, and it's not always a question of not having the money. It's a question of how much can you afford to spend, or how much do you really want to spend on this project? And knowing up front how much you're willing to spend is a good starting point. Because people, design is kind of a fantasy thing for most people.
Yeah.
So if you keep your head and start thinking about the dollars first, because it's always about money. I don't care what anybody says. Nobody has an unlimited budget.
Yeah.
And you see these fancy projects that are like, millions of dollars, but the people are billionaires.
Yeah.
So it's all relative. But I worked for billionaires, and, I have a funny story about a client that I had, that I would go to her and I'd say, I want to spend $500 to do something in the rose garden. Oh, no. I don't want to do that, because it just wasn't on her radar. But then she'd have me do the pots at the pool and spend $75,000.
So it's preference, right?
So it's preference. It's preference, and it's also, people like that have had a lot of different properties. Every property, including yours, is worth a certain amount of money. And there's only a certain amount of money that you're willing to put in it. Because I can take a 30 by 30 yard, and I can design a $300,000 garden, which is ridiculous. But I can do it if that's what you want. But normally something like that would be more in the 50 range.
Would you say you need a designer on every project, or would you say there's certain projects where you do or don't need a designer? What are your thoughts on that?
It depends on the complexity.
Yeah.
And what you're looking for. I mean, I've done something as simple as a planting plan for a very small residence. But they wanted, cactus, and they wanted interesting things, and they wanted it well laid out.
Yeah.
To answer that question, I would say that there are some contractors and some even gardeners that are good at laying out things. But people have to be aware that design is a certain flow. There's a rhythm, there's repetition, there's all these factors that go into it. And I'll walk out to a job and I'll just lay things out, and people go, how did you do that? Well, it's years of experience, and it's also design background. And most people, I find, will make mistakes in the fact that they'll buy this plant. And I've done houses that were done years ago, like in the 40s, where they didn't have designers. And people go to the nursery and they buy a plant and they'd stick it in, and now the thing is huge and nothing works, and it doesn't flow. So that's the big pitfall when people think they can do their own garden.
No,
so I'd say if you can afford a designer, it's worth the money.
Yeah, so worth the investment.
Right.
Now,
investment. And it is an investment.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it saves on the construction costs? Have you noticed that
Absolutely,
the front end?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also too, if you have a designer, they have the background in knowing what different materials are. And, people will show me, a lot of designers don't like people to show them magazine pictures and all that. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because it gives me a feel of what they're looking for. So, what I do is I look at that and then I look at their budget and I say, okay, this person can't afford to do all stone or it doesn't really need it.
Yeah.
But if I use this material or that material, I can work with them on that. And I also have, not to offend you, but I have contractors that are on what I call different grade levels.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a project that I know has a certain smaller budget, I might use this guy to do the planting and irrigation and use that guy to do the masonry, knowing that because I've worked with all these people that they do quality work, but this is more a project that's in line with the client's budget. And then if it's a really large scale project, and all of it, also it depends on the scale. I mean, because I have contractors that can do very small jobs and they only have a certain amount of people working for them. And then I have contractors like you that can handle really large things.
Yeah.
So if I was doing a really big job that was very high end, I would call you, but I also know that you can do smaller things.
Yeah.
And so, but with quality.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to refer anybody that I can't back up.
Do you think it's really important that if you're looking for a landscape designer that they can refer people to handle the rest of the construction? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah, you think that's crucial?
Yeah, I got my landscape architect's license in 1976.
Yeah.
And then when Jerry Brown was governor, they decided to do away with the landscape board.
Yeah.
And then architects took it over and brought it back again. And around that time, I was kind of semi-retiring. And so I let the landscape architect's license go.
Yeah.
But the thing is that when you do residential, you don't need it as long as you're not doing, major construction drawings. And most architects use engineers for that anyway. But to answer your question, I think that, that you always need a designer.
Yeah.
If you can get it.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it, at least in my experience, right? I've seen that having a designer on the front end saves so much in duplicating work and efforts and understanding clarity of scope and having a final budget that you can then say, look, this is too much or too little, and then tweaking that design because you have the template, right? You've got everything down on paper, so you can tweak it and say, well, let's remove this. Let's take this off. Let's move this here. When you don't have that, especially on bigger projects, it becomes really difficult to understand your budget and then tweak and adjust things.
I think an easy way to answer your question is I would say that 9 out of 10 designs that I do, we come up with a layout, based on what I discussed with the client. And then I run it by the contractors and we get a budget. And usually when we're doing revisions, that's the reason for it. It's to bring costs down with different materials, etc. So that's why it's so important to know what your budget is up front. And also designers, also to answer your question, I don't think that most people are going to hire a landscape designer unless they have some sort of resource to do the installation. Yeah. Because I would say most people out there don't have a contractor in mind unless the designer's been referred to them by somebody they know. So usually when they call a designer, they're looking to get a design and they're looking for somebody who can help them get it installed because nobody's just looking to get a piece of paper with drawings on it. Yeah. The main reason for having a design is so you don't make mistakes. Yeah. And so you can work with somebody who steers you in the right direction. But they also want you to be able to refer them to contractors. Because I'm at a point in my career now where I generally don't go out to the jobs during construction. Yeah. I mean, I will if I need to, but the contractors that I work with have worked with me for so long and I talk to them every day that they understand what I want.
You've built those relationships.
And they can work from my plans because I do 3D views and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
you know.
So to kind of wrap it up here for the listeners, I think this is phenomenal. One last question for you, Glenn. It would be, imagine that those that are listening are family members and they're going to go out and they're going to hire a landscape designer. What's some advice you'd want to give them in embarking on this process? I know you covered a lot of great tips, some awesome gold nuggets, but is there a few more things that you feel like they should know in terms of embarking on this journey, navigating who's the right person? Are they signatory, specializing in one thing, or are they someone like you who can handle multiple different types of designs? What do you have for them?
I think it depends on the client, because there are certain really well-known, great signature designers that only do drought tolerant or only do this or that. If that's the look that you're looking for, then that's the designer for you. But if you're like most people, if you have an idea, you want to get your landscape done, you want a pool, you wanted this, you wanted that, you're not necessarily thinking about style, maybe drought tolerant because it's trendy now. But, I would say then you want a designer who's flexible, somebody who can do whatever. I generally, because I have a background in architecture, I generally design in keeping with the architectural style of the house. So if it's, just a ranch style house, you can do just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's English or if it's French or if it's Asian or what have you, then it's always good to come up with a landscape design that's going to go with that style house. It doesn't necessarily have to be traditional. You can do a contemporary twist on it.
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, Glenn, I want to...
That's what I tell relatives. And
yeah.
I tell everybody the same thing, budget. Make sure that you have a good relationship with the person you're working with, because you're going to be working with them for a while.
Yeah.
I want to just jump. We can just cut away from this. I want to, if we can, do one last question. We haven't actually spoken about scams from landscape designers.
Yeah.
We've only heard about scams from construction, from contractors.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there is any, if there's a question
Yeah.
or any answers you might have, Glenn. For example, you've heard about other clients that have been scammed by other landscape designers, and if there's anything they can look out for on that, potentially.
It's not.
That's the question, though. You'll have to
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, Glenn, tell me, what are some scams to look out for if you're going to hire a landscape designer?
Okay, so no offense, Matt, but that's more prevalent among contractors.
Yeah.
The reason being that if you're hiring a landscape architect, for example, they're licensed by the state, and I know contractors are too, but I don't hear of a whole lot of scams, by architects or by landscape designers per se, because most of them realize, my phone number wasn't even listed for 20 years because I got so much business from referral. Most of them realize that your reputation is everything, and that's the key. And so if you go around scamming people, it's going to catch up with you, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a landscape designer. I don't have a specific story. I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah.
But that's my take on it. But again, if if you do your homework and you feel comfortable with the person that you're hiring and you have good references from them and you feel like they can give you what you're looking for, then you should be fine.
Yeah, and I can tell you from my side of it, because obviously in my office we get the call and they have the design and they're trying to build it. The scams that I see are basically a white 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with some sketch circles and a little bit of a pathway, and they paid $5,000 for that sheet, and they can't build it. There's no names of any of the plants. There's no location, no layout, and they're like, "Well, I hired a designer and I'm ready to go," and they hand it over to my team. And
okay, I can answer that. That again goes back to doing your homework.
Yeah.
Because when I go to meet a client, I have one sheet that's all colored. It shows everything. All the notes are on there. The plants are on there. The lights are on there. Everything is included. So if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I'm a really great designer," and they don't show you what they're going to do for you, like they don't show you that I do 3D views. It's very simple. I have a plan. I have 3D views. They can see what they're going to get. So if the designer that you're talking to can't show you what you're going to get and it's not as complete as it needs to be, then probably one of the problems is your designer is some person who just decided they wanted to do design. So you can also ask them where they went to school, What's their design background? Again, it's doing your homework.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were going to buy a car, you would research it online. And the problem is most people get enamored with designers. The word designer, it's like celebrity or movie star or whatever, or architect. So I would say, be smart, do your homework.
Yeah. What about, and I've seen this too, at least on my end, and I'll speak from my experience. I've seen designs that look really pretty, but for example, it'll be a complicated fireplace or it'll be a real complicated cook center, and it'll just have the plan view looking down on that drawing of just a little cutout, and it'll have some, you'll see the grill feature, but that you can't build off of that. You don't know how tall it is, and I know in your designs, you do a full perspective, you do 3D close-up renderings. I mean, your plans are buildable. What would you say in terms of making a selection and avoiding a plan that looks really pretty, but isn't necessarily buildable and can't really budget around?
Here's what I'll say, okay? If I'm a homeowner and I look at a plan that has a plan view of a fireplace, and I haven't seen what it's going to look like from all four sides and whatever, how am I supposed to expect the contractor to build it? Again, common sense.
We want to,
the key.
yeah. And you'd be surprised. I mean, there's a lot of homeowners with good intentions, right? That I think hire somebody and trust in them. And then, it gets to us and we're like, well, we're stuck kind of putting together the loose ends. But I think that's a great point in terms of slowing things down, really making sure that you understand and can conceptualize the plan. And if as a homeowner, you're not confident that you understand all the pieces of what's happening, there's a good chance your contractor is not going to know it either.
Right. And I understand too, part of what happens is sometimes the designer you hired has done your friend's house and you've seen the friend's house. So you think this guy's going to be fantastic and my project's going to look beautiful and whatever. And 9 times out of 10, unless there's 3Ds and everything, the client doesn't really know what this thing's going to look like till it's built. And their reaction will be, wow, I had no idea it was going to be this fantastic, or what the hell is this?
Yeah.
So again, it's up to the client to make sure that they look at this from the contractor's perspective and their perspective and go, what am I getting? I mean, you wouldn't buy anything else without knowing what you were getting. And seeing a little square on a plan doesn't mean that's a fireplace.
I agree. Yeah. And then obviously specifying materials is another one. I've seen,
Exactly.
I've seen drawings where they look really pretty and it's a perspective, but it's just a countertop. And is it poured concrete? Is it, what is that surface made out of? So I think another thing for homeowners is not being scared to ask the details, not being scared to say, well, what is this made out of? What are you envisioning the countertop being made out of? What is this surface? I think sometimes we think of, at least I've seen it on my side, where homeowners think it's a silly question, so they might be embarrassed to ask it. And I don't find that that's ever really the case. I think there's no question that's too silly or parenthetically stupid when you're doing a design.
Well, I think most people are sophisticated enough. I mean, if you have an interior designer, they're going to show you samples of everything. You should expect your designer to do the same. And, you shouldn't be afraid to say to them, well, that's kind of an expensive material. It's your money, right?
Yeah.
So is there something that we could use that's less expensive that would look just as fantastic? And if the designer's experienced enough, they should be able to answer that question, or they should be able to just flat out tell you, no, if that's what you want, this is what it's going to cost. Because you need a designer who's going to be real with you, not just tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Glenn, I think that's phenomenal feedback. I think we've taken a lot away from this in terms of understanding that no question is too small, making sure that we have the right understanding of the plan. And if we don't, we can ask those questions, seeing all four sides. I love that. I think that, that one question alone for the plans that we get, it would eliminate 80-90% of the questions that we have. So
just be smart.
Yeah, be smart.
It's your money.
I like that. That could be a slogan for the show. Be smart. It's your money. Well, Glenn, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I really appreciate you taking your time.
Thank you, Matt.